welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy it. Today we're going to be going over the patch history of World of Warcraft, and we're going to be starting at the very first patch, which was patch 0.3, and it was on May the 3rd, 2003. That's insane. So, obviously, we have the weekly stuff, as always. This is going to be quite a substantial one, I think. But, just bear with it. So, the weekly is you have the world bosses, is Valinor, Morgeth, and Antros. You can get many different conduits, anima, and stuff like that. So, make sure that you do them. And they are always useful and relevant. The brawl for this week is Packed House. It is a 15 versus 15 in an arena map, so very compact, very hectic and close quarters. It's very simple brawl, and one that is actually quite fun to do. And the event for this week is Warlords of Draenor Time Walking. So if you want certain mounts, or you wish to save up some more time walking badges, then definitely head on over there and do your time walking dungeons. So we're going to jump straight into it. Now, patch 0.3.4 came out May the 3rd, 2003, and there was nothing on it. Bit anticlimactic, that one. But the next patch, obviously, 0.4, came out in August of the same year, 2003, and this was the internal alpha patch. It introduced a minimap, world map, and Undercity. The patch 0.5.3 came out in December of the same year, and it basically is labelled as Undead Push. So this was the highlights and notes of it, Undead Push. The next patch was a 0.5 patch. The next two were actually, and they came out in Jan 15th and March 18th, and these, this was 2004, and they were Tri-Horde Push and All Alliance Push. I'm not too sure what that means, so I'm guessing it was the races of the initial World of Warcraft. So All Alliance Push would be the Night Elves, Dwarves, and Gnomes, whereas they would have been playing human in the sort of internal alpha patch, I would imagine so. And the Tri-Horde Push is probably the same, with probably Orc, Troll, and Undead. Maybe? No, it would be the Torrent, because the Undead Push was in the previous one. So we're looking at our first 0.6 patch. You have April 13th, 2004. You have a rest state, which is your rested XP, your blue bar. You have inns and hearthstones, as well as guilds are implemented. You have changes to the combat system. I'm not too sure what this one entails, but, apparently there were different changes to the combat system. Two new dungeons were introduced, that being the Scarlet Monastery and Black Fathom Deeps. Scarlet Monastery being one of the most iconic dungeons in the, zone of Tirisfal Glades. Black Fathom Deeps, not as much, but it was a very useful dungeon to have just in the top left of Ashenvale. You have a new skill system, as well as class changes. New skill system, I'm not too sure what it was. It might have been the one where it's kind of like the pet, the WoW Classic sort of pet skill tree. I'm pretty sure it was in this instance. So I'm pretty sure that's what the new skill system was. Patch 0.7 was on June 15th, 2004. You had PvP system testing. You had two testing servers, PvE and PvP. All items were deleted and quest progress was reset. You had the post system that was implemented in this patch, as well as mounts that were introduced, and the level cap was raised to level 45, which is 15 levels off of the initial release of Classic, which was of course level 60. You have major class changes, as well as assorted other changes, and two new dungeons with Gnomeregon and Alderman. Alderman being a bit more of the favourable dungeon out of these two, definitely. There are a few more 0.7 patches, very minor. honestly, they have no highlights or notes on them at all. There's only 3 of them that say Mac only. I don't know. Yeah, you're going to have to be more specific with that one. But the patch point 8 came out in July 7th, so just under a month after. And this implemented auction houses, guard systems, so guards within major cities. Sunken Temple and Razorfen Downs were introduced into WoW. Sunken Temple and Razorfen Downs being very good and very, well, Sunken Temple at least being a very intricate place to find the route through the instance. The level cap was raised by 5 levels to level 50. Minor class changes and other changes, assorted other changes apparently. A month after that, you have the patch point 9, and this introduced the Hunter class, which is very late on in its sort of pre-release state. Boats and Zeppelins are partly implemented. This is obviously only a couple of them, so maybe something like boats from Darnassus to Darkshore or something like that. Items had a major overhaul, sharing quests with party, and the level cap was raised to level 55. Again, more major class changes and assorted other changes. You had a point 10 patch on the September 18th, 2004. 2 new dungeons, Blackrock Spire and Stratholme. These are 2 max level dungeons, so you can tell that they're getting to the release of classic World of Warcraft. You have raid groups that have been introduced now, as well as the Deep Run tram, so the tram that goes in between Stormwind and Ironforge was introduced. And finally, we got to the level cap, which we had in release of WoW, which was level 60. Some class changes, some bug fixes, and other changes. You had point 11 patch come out 11 days later on the 29th of September. And this introduced new models and animation systems, new looting methods, some class changes, and other changes. And then finally, patch point 12 came out in October 11th, 2004. And what this did was add item durability and just tweak some of the assorted changes as well as class changes. Now, these were some of the smaller, or these were obviously pre-World of Warcraft. So after this, you have the release of World of Warcraft, and the first patch came on November 7th, 2004, which was obviously the release, and it was only released in US at that time, I believe. Yeah. So, well, it was released a month after that in the EU, and quite a while after for like Asian countries, I believe. I can't quite find it at the moment, but I'm sure I will. I'll definitely find it in a second. So patch 1.1 was just the initial release, obviously. Patch 1.2 was Mysteries of Maraudon, and that was on the 18th of December 2004. Maraudon was introduced. The Gurubashi event in Stranglethorn Vale was introduced. You can also hide your cloak and helm in the interface menu. And you had the first Feast of Great Winter event. Obviously, this became Veil of Great Winter or whatever it was in the future. Patch 1.2.1 released a few days earlier, and it's just sort of fixing some of the EU related issues. So rolling items in French and Germany will now work properly. It's just them sort of things. The next major patch that we had was 1.3, which was Ruins of Diamol. And this came out on March 7th, 2005, so a few months after. You had meeting stones that were introduced. You had Diamol that was released, as well as Azagos and Lord Kazakh, the 2 world bosses. Diamol being where you could enter 3 different instances, and they all had their own different dungeons and loot and stuff like that. And the meeting stones weren't necessarily used for anything like they are used today. They were meant to be used as a way to just meet people at this stone who were interested in doing the dungeon. You'd go to this meeting stone and just wait there and see who would turn up. Obviously, that didn't work out as they wanted to, and they were later changed where you could use them to summon your party. The next major patch was 1.4. That was released in April 8th, 2005. So a month after, which was really quick. This introduced the Epic Priest Quest, the Epic Hunter Quest, and the Honor system, the PvP Honor system. So the Priest Quest being where you get your Anathema and Benediction. The Hunter Quest being where you get Rockdalar and Lockdalar, the bow and the staff. All very, very cool weapons. And the quests were amazing and very unique to the classes. And they gave the classes their own very unique feeling to them, which was amazing. The PvP Honor system obviously being the Honor system, the rank 14 system that we all know. But maybe some don't love. So that was basically the main point of that patch. The next major patch was 1.5, and it introduced Battlegrounds. Bit weird why the PvP and Honor system was introduced before the Battlegrounds, but whatever. This came out in June 7th, 2005, which is really strange. So you've got this Honor system, but you didn't have Battlegrounds until 3 months after? Yeah, 3 months. So it introduced Outer Valley and Warsong Gulch. Again, both very good staple points of Battlegrounds and very solid to help with the PvP and Honor system. 1.6 was released in July 12th, so a week or just under a week after the 1.5 patch. This introduced Blackwing Lair, Dark Moonfair, Battle Masters, as well as Warlock's talent trees revamped and Warrior talent trees revamped. So obviously the Warlock and the Warriors need a bit of doing up throughout Classic. But Blackwing Lair, the new raid introduced, the Battle Masters being put into cities was really good. Otherwise you would have to travel to certain places to queue up for Warsong Gulch and Outer Valley. So it was very good and a very solid patch. Patch 1.7 was in September 13th, 2005, and it was Rise of the Blood God. You had Zul'Gurub that was released, the very first 20-man raid. You had the new battleground, Arathi Basin, introduced, which was 15-player, and it was the sort of resource-based battleground. Hunter talents were also updated, as well as the Stranglethorn fishing extravaganza, where you could win yourself a lucky fishing hat and different prizes after you won this tournament. And high level items were added, I guess. That's all it says, really. It's very weird. The next patch was obviously 1.8, and this was Dragons of Nightmare. This was released in October 10th, so just under a month. And this gave us the Dragons of Nightmare, the 4 corrupted dragons of the Emerald Dream, which was all around the world. So you have one in Duskwood, one in Hinterlands, one in Feralis, and one in... oh my god, I can kind of pick Ashenvale. That's it. So 4 different world boss dragons, all giving different loot and stuff like that. Silithus was a totally revamped zone for level 60s. Solo players and 5-man parties, and the Druid talent tree was updated also. 1.9 was the Gates of Ahn'Qiraj. This introduced, obviously, the instance Ahn'Qiraj. You had 2 raids within it, the Ruins and the Temple. The Ruins being 20-man and the Temple being 40-man. You had new Tier 2 epic armor models and graphics because they looked like leveling greens before this. You had linked auction houses, which are amazing, by the way, because no auction house was actually linked. So if you put something on the Stormwind auction house, it was on only the Stormwind auction house, so you had to be careful where you were actually putting your auctions. Raid dungeon timers, so this was basically DBM, as it were, like countdowns and stuff like that. You had Timbermore hold quests that were revamped. Talent trees were revamped. as well as 15-minute raid versions of blessings for paladins, because obviously before that they only had 5-minute blessings, and all you would do is bring paladins to raid to literally spam like buffs, because obviously by the time that you buffed everyone, all 40 people in the raid, you'd have to rebuff them again, because the first person who had the 5-minute buff, their buff is running out in a minute. So that was the whole point of a paladin, really. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. The 1.10 patch was Storms of Azeroth. In this, you had some weather effects, you had tier 0.5 armor sets, and the Priest talent tree revamp. Nothing too special in these sort of patches. 1.11, sorry, I should say, was Shadow of the Necropolis. This is one that not many people actually got to see, but it was mage talent trees that were revamped, as well as shaman talent trees, and Naxxramas was introduced, a necropolis floating above Stratholme. It was the final raid of Classic, but not a lot of people got to see it because, well, not a lot of people got to that point, really. A lot of people had internet issues. They didn't really understand the game. They didn't understand raiding, the sort of late game content. They were just really happy to enjoy the game as it were. And then in 1.12, you had Drums of War. This revamped some rogue talents, as well as outdoor PvP enhancements and cross-realm battlegrounds. The realm battlegrounds were huge because obviously, if people didn't want to do PvP on your server, you were kind of screwed. It would take so much time in order to actually get the battleground that you want. That was Classic in a nutshell. You have, obviously, I think 4 or 5 major patches in Burning Crusade. We'll go over them now. So after 1.12 came 2.0, and that was the Before the Storm / the Burning Crusade. This came out in, I'm going to find the date, December 5th, 2006. So a year and a half of Classic, and then they brought out their very first expansion. So this basically came with the installation of the Burning Crusade. You could install it via CDs/DVDs. Obviously, you had to buy it from the box at that time. This introduced the Looking for Group interface tool, as well as new talents, a revamped honor system, arenas, UI changes, and stuff like that. This also had like some different content. The opening of the Dark Portal started on January 9th, 2007. So a month after you were able to download it, you would be, the Dark Portal opening event was started and you could actually go into Outlands. So, it's not bad. They got some really quick content out, to be honest. The very first major patch of Burning Crusade was 2.1, and that was the Black Temple. So on May 22nd, 2007, a few months, 5 odd months after the release of Burning Crusade, you could enter the Black Temple. It was introduced. There were many different new solo and small group quests and group hubs that you could interact with. You had interface add-ons. The Druid Epic Flight Form was added as well. And you had a new arena, which was the Ruins of Lordaeron. And a load of bug fixes, apparently. It just says many, many, many bug fixes and some class changes as well. The next patch was 2.2, and this is just voice chat. So many class balance changes, and they added voice chat into this. This was on the 25th of September 2007. So this was, again, a few to several months after it. And the next big patch that a lot of people sort of enjoyed was probably 2.3, which was the Gods of Zulaman. This is when Zulaman the raid, the 20-man raid, was released, or the 10-man, sorry. Guild banks were also released, as well as Season 3 arena rewards, and the Paladin Retribution tree was revamped. And then finally you had patch 2.4, Fury of the Sunwell. This came out in March 25th, 2008. So just over 2 years of Burning Crusade, to be honest. So you have the Isle of Quel'Danas, the zone with 2 new instances. You have Magister's Terrace and Sunwell Plateau, as well as new badge gear. So badge gear is basically you gain badges doing heroics constantly. You get 1 per boss, and you could spend these badges to purchase powerful gear, pretty much. Magister's Terrace was the 5-man instance, and Sunwell Plateau was the 25-man raid and the final raid of Burning Crusade. Burning Crusade only had a few, or this was sort of the major turning point for WoW. They didn't have like 12 different patches. They had 3 major content patches and no sort of in between, as it were. And then they would start implementing the 0.5 patches later on. So moving on to patch 3.0, Wrath of the Lich King. This was released in October 14th, 2008. So how long was that? Probably several months. Several months after the final patch of Burning Crusade. What this introduced was new class spells and talents, as well as the Stormwind Harbour, barbershops in capital cities, Zeppelin Towers in Orgrimmar and Tirisfal Glades, 2 new arenas with moving obstacles and stuff like that. I don't know the 2 arenas' names, but I can remember one perfectly. I can't remember the 2 names. You also had a guild calendar, a hunter pet skill tree revamp, and you had inscription as the latest profession to be introduced. This is when they do a lot of quality of life stuff in Wrath of the Lich King. This is when a lot of the quality of life stuff starts getting implemented into World of Warcraft. The first major patch you had was 3.1, which is the Secrets of Ulduar. This came out in April 14th, 2009. And what it released was Ulduar the Raid, the Argent Tournament, as well as the Argent Tournament Grounds. Dual talent specialization, by the way. So you could spend 1,000 gold in order to have 2 different specializations and switch between them constantly whenever you wanted, and many different class changes as well. The next patch was 3.2, and that came out in August 4th, 2009, so several months after. And this released Crusaders Colosseum, as well as the Island of Conquest, the PvP battleground, and the Arena Season 7. It also released, in this patch, was Onyxia's Lair about a month after this. So, not bad. Not too bad at all. You got 2 different raids out of it, a different battleground, a new Arena Season. Very solid for the amount of, patches that actually were in this patch. And then finally, you had the final patch of Wrath of the Lich King, which was 3.3. This came out in December 8th, 2009. And this went on for several months until about June. On the first day of the patch, you had the release of Icecrown Citadel, as well as a fishing derby for Kaluak. And this is basically the Stranglethorn fishing extravaganza. You compete against other fishers to win certain items and stuff like that. And you also had cross-server looking for group. So very much quality of life change right there. During the end of the patch, you had around June 22nd, you had Ruby Sanctum that was released to the public, being the final raid of Wrath of the Lich King. So, around June you got the final raid, and at around October 12th, or 2010, you got the patch 4.0, which is the release of Cataclysm. Now, this had talent tree changes, this had a Blizzard launcher update. Reforging was something that was introduced into the game. Reforging is where you can choose different stats to have on your pieces of gear if you didn't necessarily get lucky with the stats that were already on the piece. You had a flexible raid lock system, justice points and new honor points, as well as a lot of UI changes apparently. Now, the first patch for Cataclysm was 4.1, which is the Rise of the Zandalari, and this was a revamped Zolaman and Zul'Gurub, and they were 5-player heroics instead of the raids that they were, Zul'Gurub being the 20-man raid and Zulaman being the 10-man raid from TBC. In 4.2, which was released in June 28th, 2011, you had Firelands that was released, as well as the Firelands Invasion dailies. And you had a legendary that also was introduced with the Firelands, being Dragon Wrath, Terragosa's Rest. And yeah, there wasn't much else to this patch, I'm not going to lie. The final patch was 4.3, and it was released on November 29th, 2011. And what this did was give you 3 different 5-man dungeons, them being the End Time, Well of Eternity, and Hour of Twilight, as well as the Dragon Soul raid. You had Transmogrification, which is where you can make armor look like different pieces of armor, so you can make your character look however you want. You had Void Storage, you had Raid Finder as well, and Darkmoon Isle instead of just Darkmoon Fair, because yeah, Darkmoon Fair was quite a hit apparently. A lot of people enjoyed it. And they kept adding to the final patch until April 10th, 2012. And these were just sort of like bug fixes and stuff like that. So, moving on to, what was it, Mr. Pandaria. Patch 5.0 was released on August 28th, 2012. And this introduced a lot of class changes, the new talent system, this talent system that we know today, new glyphs, as well as prime glyphs, AoE looting, which is a massive quality of life change. You also had account-wide pets, mounts, and achievements, new buff and debuff design, battle tag support, unified PvE queuing, and cross-realm zones as well. The first major patch for Mr. Pandaria was 5.1, and this was Landfall. This gave us Pandarian Campaign Begins, item level upgrades, legendary questline. The Brawlers Guild is a big thing. You got many class changes within this as well, and basically pre-Mists raid group or raids no longer need a raid group in order to complete them. So this is when they started introducing sort of damage scaling for old raids, so you can walk in there and just one-shot everything and get loot that you wanted for your transmogrification and stuff like that. This was released in November 13th, 2012. Patch 5.2 was called The Thunder King, and this was released on March 5th, 2013. Now, there were a lot of stuff to do with this, and there's absolutely loads, to be honest. But basically, it's loads of bug fixes. They're just multiple patches saying unspecified bug fixes and stuff like that. And this carried on until April 9th, when, they were fixing all of these different bugs. So for a month, the game was pretty broken, we'll say. It's literally got patch 5.2.0, patch 5.2, 2.0, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Yeah, there are a lot of bug fixes, apparently. Patch 5.3 was called Escalation, and this was released in May 21st, 2013. I'm not too sure what this one gave, but again, it's just a lot of patch fixes and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you what was in this. I couldn't tell you what season it is. I couldn't tell you what raids came with it and stuff like that. The last patch, I do know what came with it. It was Siege of Orgrimmar, and this came out on September 10th, 2013. So obviously what was released in this was Siege of Orgrimmar, the raid, and this was the final raid of the expansion. They did small updates all throughout this patch, but on February 18th, 2014, the Warlords of Draenor Collector's Edition preparation was released. And that moved us into Warlords of Draenor, of course. And, wow, I'm looking at the patch page for Warlords of Draenor. It is very sad. Warlords of Draenor was obviously released. Trying to find it. Post-launch. Oh my god. It was so delayed it was unreal. Like, honestly, it was released, I'd say, around 21st of August. Yeah, 2014. So the patch actually started on the 25th of October 2013. This was BlizzCon 2013, shown on November 8th, 2013. It's really weird how they've like written this, but basically it wasn't launched until around sort of October, November time. Post-launch content. Okay, so around November 13th, 2014, it was released, which is insane. That is absolutely insane because, yeah, the beta testing ended on June 27th, 2014. That's, yeah. There wasn't much. The launch with Warlords of Draenor, obviously the zones and stuff like that. The first major content patch came out a few months later, which is the 24th of February, 2015. It basically introduced the Heirloom tab, Twitter integration, and updated Blood Elf models, as well as WoW tokens in this patch. And then sadly, 5 months later, on June 23rd, 2015, we had the Fury of Hellfire, which is the final patch of Warlords of Draenor. And this gave us Tanan Jungle, Hellfire Citadel, Garrison Campaign continuation. I like how it specifies Left Shark, which is a pet, was in this. You also had flying that was introduced into Draenor and a mercenary mode, as well as Valor and Cataclysm time walking, as well as cross-realm mythic raiding was introduced. And yeah, there wasn't much else to it. The cross-realm mythic and the Cataclysm time walking were introduced November 17th. So nearly like about 5 months after. 5 months? 4 months after the initial patch dropped. And yeah, Warlords of Draenor does not have a lot of content. I will say that. Content that it did produce was very good though. I will give it that. This led into Legion. Legion being one of the best expansions. They've kept it very simple in terms of the patches. But Family and Friends Alpha was released on November 20th, 2015. And then there was a closed alpha on February 18th, 2016. So, anywhere between then and October 25th, which is the first patch, it was released. I think it was like a summer release. So around like June time, if I'm not mistaken. But October 25th was the first major patch, which was Return to Karazhan 7.1. And obviously this introduced Karazhan and stuff like that. So new mythic dungeons and stuff. 7.2 was the Tomb of Sargeras. This was released a few months after Return to Karazhan. And this was, 28th of March 2017. This was the Tomb of Sargeras. This was the Broken Shore. It was introduced, so a new zone, a new raid and stuff like that. So very good patch. Again, you only have to move a few months forward. August 29th, 2017 was when the final patch of Legion came out, and that was the Shadows of Argus. You had Argus, an entire planet, to do with the Draenei and their existence, what happened there and stuff like that. And you had a new raid, which was absolutely exquisite. But you have to forget these are the big major patches. You had 0.5 patches in between, which was every few months. They absolutely destroyed the patch content with Legion. They absolutely nailed it and couldn't ask for better patches, to be honest. Moving into Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands, obviously. Patch 8.0 was released on July 21st, 2018. This gave us the War of Thorns, the Battle for Lordaeron, and, the Battle for Azeroth release, the pre-launch events and stuff like that. 8.1 was released a few months later, in December 11th, 2018. This gave us the Darkshore Warfront, Battle for Dazara Lore, and Crucible of Storm raids. as well as the continuation of the war campaign. It gave us faction assaults, new island expeditions, dwarf and blood elf heritage armor, as well as Gnomeregan pet battle dungeon. Wait. Yeah, what the hell? That's weird. Then you had the 0.5 patch, which came out, so 8.1.5, which came out on March 12, 2019. You had Coltiran human and Zandalari troll allied races that were unlocked, the very first allied races. You had the Dark Moon Fair roller coaster ride that was also added. And you had Children's Week that was updated. You can get loads of micro holidays. So Wanderers Festival, Vashir Diving Day, Free T-shirt Day, Warlords of Draenor Time Walking, Portal Rooms in Stormwind and Orgrimmar. You had like Profession quest lines, Brawlers Guild, Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin remaster, and new PvP brawls and which is Comp Stomp. 8.2 was released in June 25th, 2019. This gave us Nazjatar and the Eternal Palace raid, Mechagon Island, as well as the Mega Dungeon of Mechagon, a new arena, the Robodrome, Gnome and Tauren heritage armor, again more island expeditions, a heroic warfront difficulty, mount equipment, which you can attach to your mount so you don't get dazed, you can walk on water, stuff like that. And flying was unlocked throughout Coltiris and Zandalar. The 8.2.5 patch was released on September 24th, 2019. This gave us model updates for Goblin and Worgen. Party Sync was introduced, as well as a Recruit a Friend revamp. So if you wanted to recruit a friend, you could do so and get rewards out of it. The final patch was 8.3, and this was introduced in 2020 on January 14th. This gave us Assaults, Horrific Visions, Nyalotha raid, Mechagon and Valpyra, or Mechanome and Valpyra allied races. It gave us Worgen and Goblin heritage armor, as well as an Auction House revamp, which is very good, by the way. And it gave us Season 4 of Battle for Azeroth, which, you know, is the PvP seasons. Now, we're currently in Shadowlands, and we've had 2 patches for it. The first being 9.0, and it was October 13th, 2020. So we had the level squish, so instead of level 120, we're level 60 now. We had Exile's Reach that was introduced, the new level 1 to 10 starting experience. We had time walking campaigns, as well as new character customizations and stuff, and Death's Rising, which was a limited time event. We also had the 9.0.5 patch on March 9th. Nothing too much was added. There was nothing that was added really. We had to wait basically nearly a year before we got content, which was 9.1. And that was June 29th, 2021. We got Sanctum of Domination, which is the newest raid. The Tazavesh, which was the mega dungeon for this expansion. As well as new areas in the Moor, which is Korthia, and Helgard Keep, which is a subzone. Torghast was reworked, so new layers and new bonus floors and stuff like that. More Covenant renowns and rewards went up, as well as Covenant-specific flying mounts, cosmetics armors for each Covenant, transmog each shoulder separately, and flying was unlocked in Covenant zones, so Revendreth, Maldraxxus, Bastion, and Ardenweald. Now, 9.1.5 wasn't much to do with anything. All it was some very good quality of life changes, such as, catch-up mechanics and stuff like that. And we are currently at 9.2 as of February 22nd, so a month ago, which gave us Zereth Mortis, Sepulchre of the First Ones, and Zoval's final chapter. So this is the final, or the finale, of Shadowlands. We're going to get a preview of the latest or the newest expansion within the next few weeks. It's somewhere in April. I believe that they're revealing that. I can't remember the exact date. But it goes to show how, if you look at Classic, it had 12 different patches, all of them obviously being a bit, here and there. They obviously wanted a load of bug fixes, and they were trying to perfect sort of the feel of World of Warcraft as going forward. And then it sort of slowly evened out to big major patches every, several months, the 0.1 patch, the 0.2, 0.3 patch and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's very tough, or it's very cool to see from where World of Warcraft started, where you're looking at, say, like the pre-patches before WoW had even like started. The Hunter class was introduced a few months before the game had released. Like, how insane is that? The level cap was only raised to level 60 before World of Warcraft was released, like a month and a half before it was actually done. Stratholme and Blackrock Spire, again, only released a month before the game actually came out. The models that we use in Classic only came out a month or so before the game was released. Like, seeing like Hearthstones and Inns were added several months before the game's release, seeing all of that sort of thing is just amazing to me, and it's quite fun to see how far the game has actually progressed in that time, and what the different patches sort of included, and how WoW has built itself up over the years from 2004 and as early as 2003, as I can see here, where there was sort of probably a, very sort of hard alpha build, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, it's just fun to sort of go back over and have a look. But that is all for this week. Told you it might be a little bit of a long one. Thank you all very much for listening and sticking with it as always. Do check out the social medias, check out the Patreon, check out all of the Twitch, YouTube and stuff like that. Constant streams, videos and stuff happening up there. Thank you all very much for listening once again, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.